Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, June 26th, 2008. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. Man, I've missed saying that over the past few weeks. This week, we bring you the keynote address from the National Homebrewers Conference in Cincinnati, as delivered by Jim Koch of the Boston Beer Company. If you're new to homebrewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. And you can follow me on Twitter when it's working. My username is Basic Brewing. That's all one word. I told you we were taking the month of June off, and I guess I lied because we're back, and it's before the end of the month. But this one's kind of a no-brainer to put together. Jim Koch gave an inspirational speech, and the American Homebrewers Association was kind enough to let me record it in its entirety to bring it to those of you who didn't get to attend the conference. And boy, what a conference. 1,000 homebrewers all in one place. And that's a record, 100 more than the past record attendance. So it was just awesome. We had a great time, Steve and I did. We recorded a lot of sound for you. We toured a local brewery and got a video tour and an audio interview on that, and we'll be bringing you all of that in the next few weeks. Steve and I, while I'm on that, Steve and I were extremely gratified to see the number of brewers who came up to shake our hands and say hello and just kind of touch base in person while we're at the NHC, and it was awesome to meet you guys in person. And it's a great motivator to keep providing the good stuff in the podcasts. And I told my wife, I said, you should be here. People actually listen to the podcast. You can see them in person. So awesome. I can't tell you how good that made us feel. And more on that to come next week. I'm going to keep these opening remarks short so that I can keep the show less than an hour, I hope. But I do want to let you know that Steve and I were guests on the Good Beer Show while we were in Cincinnati, and along with Jeffrey T., Vicky, and Bonus Beer Bob from the Good Beer Show, we were joined by Jeff Bearer from Craft Beer Radio, and it was good to spend time with him and his family. John Palmer was there as well, and Dan Listerman, who's a super guy, and it was his homebrew shop that we all invaded, and it was a lot of fun, and Jeffrey T. says that you should be able to download that this week. So maybe by the time this show gets out, you'll be able to find that, too, at goodbeershow.com. Incidentally, while I was on the Good Beer Show, I told a story about putting a beer bottle in an aquarium when I was in high school. And when I got home and saw the current issue of Zymergy, it had a beer bottle in an aquarium on the cover. Bizarre. Also, I have to kind of warn you that I was a little more rowdy on the Good Beer Show than I am on our podcast. So I guess I was channeling Mikey Mason a little bit since he wasn't there. And speaking of rowdy, in his speech, Jim Koch says a couple of swear words. And I say that because usually on our podcasts I edit them to keep them work and family safe. And I was debating on whether to censor, to bleep Jim's comments. But then George Carlin passed away. And I said, well, there you go. So in memory of George Carlin, I'm going to let those words fly. But, Jim does use them in a sentence. So, so it's okay. We start out with Gary Glass, the director of the American Homebrewers Association, and Charlie Papazian. You know who Charlie is. And you should know that above Charlie's head on the stage was a huge Sam Adams poster with a giant picture of a beer in one of those Sam Adams glasses. So that's what you'll hear Charlie refer to in the beginning of his remarks. So without further delay, let's go back to Cincinnati.
We are very privileged to have Jim Koch as our keynote speaker. My name is Gary Glass. I'm the director of the AHA. I'm going to bring up Charlie Papazian, the president of the Brewers Association and the founder of the AHA, to help us introduce Jim Koch.
All right. When I was about to enter this room, I was feeling relaxed and not worrying. But as I went through that door and saw all these people, and I saw this up here, I felt like that monkey or ape. Remember the movie 2001? The closing scene on the far side of the moon, or the dark side of the moon, or wherever he was, and the monkey's there, and there's this monolith, and there's this, and he goes up to gingerly kind of touch. I feel like I want somebody to bring a step ladder so I can get up here and touch this thing. I'm up here to introduce Jim Koch, but before I do, I just want to assure all of you that, yes, I still brew beer at home in 5-gallon batches usually. And right now I have on tap, let's see, I have Escapade Brown India Ale. I put a little bit of brown malt in my last India Pale Ale recipe, made it dark, so I couldn't call it Pale Ale. I have Sunshine in the Rainy Season India Pale Ale, Tada Nada Oatmeal Stout. I have Kings and Vagabonds Czech Style Lager. I have a Smoktoberfest Rauch Beer. I have a Kickapoo Maibach. And while I'm away from home at this conference, I know things are getting better because I have 4 beers fermenting. And one is a Helles-style High Water, a Helles-style German lager. I have a Left Molly Double, which appeared recently in Zymergy magazine as a recipe. I'm making the second batch of that. I have an Ordinary Bitter. I have a Choke Cherry Wine, which I made last year. My wife and I, we picked, with our friends, we picked a whole lot of choke cherries. And a peach elderberry currant mead that's still in the secondary from our harvest last fall. And I also have fermenting another batch of Kings and Vagabonds Czech-style lager. And I mentioned that with an accent and on purpose, because that Czech-style lager brings me to a quote that I have in my book about, microbrewed adventures. I write a little bit about Jim Koch and how he established his brewery. And he said, "It's true, Samuel Adams' Boston Lager started as a homebrew. I brewed the first batch in my kitchen in 1984 using a recipe of my great-great-great-grandfather's from the 1870s. I fell in love with the taste of this beer. I thought that if I could taste this beer every day of my life, I'd be a happy man. That was my motivation for starting the Boston Beer Company." I can relate, and I think that every one of the 1,000 home brewers in this room can relate to that kind of feeling, that if you could brew the kind of beer you make and taste it every day of your life, you would be a happy man. Now, I don't think that all of us have the balls, or the female equivalent of whatever that is, to establish a brewery that's going on to close to 2 million barrels of great tasting, making some great tasting beer. I want to say that I first met Jim in 1984 when he brewed that first batch of homebrew that from his father's recipe. Some friends of mine at the time said, "Hey, I want you to meet this guy." I was in St. Louis for a Master Brewers Association of America's conference, my first national conference. And we were staying at the Mark Twain suite of this really pretty funky hotel. And we were on a pretty low budget. And at the time, I'm just kind of framing the situation. These were the early days of my association life and being involved with the American Homebrewers Association. And he said, "I want you to meet this guy who wants to start a brewery." and brew this beer from his great-grandfather's recipe. I said, okay. And so we met this guy and his father, Jim Koch, and his father in St. Louis, and we drove. What he wanted to do while he was in St. Louis is find his. Well, Jim can clarify whether it was great or great-great or great-great-great grandfathers, but the Lewis Koch Lager Brewery located in St. Louis. Now, the only thing he knew that it was in view of the smokestacks of the Anheuser-Busch Brewery down a road, and he knew the general vicinity, and he knew it didn't exist anymore, but he wanted to find the location to make a pilgrimage to this place. So we drove around quite a few times, and we came across a corner lot. We got out of the car, and we kicked some rusty cans, and it was overgrown with weeds. There was nothing in the lot that resembled a brewery. We walked around, and in the middle of the lot, there was a relatively, I guess you could say, a bare space. And when we looked down, we knew we had found the site of the brewery, because there at our feet were perfectly preserved wooden bricks. And these were the wooden bricks from the coopers, where they made the barrels. And when they make the barrels in those days, they used to use pitch to preserve the wood. And obviously a lot of pitch dripped down onto the wooden brick floor and preserved these wooden bricks. They were still there. That was the only thing that remained that resembled anything akin to a part of a brewery. We each took home a few of those bricks. We got into the car, and Jim, in his incredible enthusiasm, which he has, that was 24 years ago, and he still has that enthusiasm, as you are about to find out. As we got into the car, about to leave, he says, wait a minute. He got out of the car with his father, and they went into the trunk, and he brought out a sledgehammer and a chisel, and we went out, and he said, I want to take a cornerstone, or, some stones out of it. There was a little bit of the wall left of whatever building had been there, and he chiseled a little bit, and we took a little piece of rocks back with us. And that was my first experience hanging out with Jim Koch. He was passionate then, and he is passionate today, as he ever was. And as you know, if you've ever tasted his beer, he has remained true to what we all hold dear to our hearts as home brewers. Jim reminds brewers all the time, people drink the beer. It's not a commodity. It's not a label, an added flavor, nor market research. It has soul and heart. So do the people who make it. Jim has nurtured the New Family Brewery as one of the world's leading brewers of specialty craft beers in the true spirit of home brewing, microbrewing, craft brewing, and beer brewing in general in the world. Please join me in welcoming Jim Koch.
I'd like to meet this guy you're talking about. Oh, thank you. Thank you for removing the water up from up here. I was a little frightened by that stuff. I promised Charlie I would do this, but I didn't promise I'd do it sober, so... Thank you for inviting me. This is a very cool experience for me because I first went to an AHA conference in 1983, a year before I went to the Master Brewers meeting and met Charlie. And what those of us who were brewing beer commercially in the first half of the 80s remember is that when we went to a conference, there was a sort of craft brewers thing, but it was basically just kind of a little adjunct, and I hate to use that word, to the Homebrewers Convention. The Homebrewers Convention was the big deal. And then there were a handful of, rogues and vagabonds or whatever, who were struggling to brew commercially, often with very little success. And it was the homebrewing community that nurtured and sustained the handful of craft brewers 25 years ago. The homebrewing community in the United States has always been the soil that has provided the nourishment, the energy, and the sustenance for the brewing culture that we're enjoying today. And for me to be able to come back here 25 years later and say thank you is really a pleasure. And it's an especial pleasure for a number of other reasons. I grew up here in Cincinnati, and my family's still here. I think it's a great culinary capital because where else do they use, cinnamon and cocoa to make chili? Thank you. And it's actually, obviously very German, probably very rooted in its brewing traditions. When I was growing up here, there were 5 breweries, active commercial breweries here. And, there's also a place where even the ice cream is made in copper pots, if you ever visited Grader's. We are very serious about our brewing traditions here. So for me to be able to do this, back home is really cool. But I think the really coolest thing is, I think for all of us, is that I cannot think of any other time or any other place in the 8,000 years of brewing history where there were 1,000 brewers in one room. That may never have happened. How cool is it after 25 years for us to be 1,000 brewers strong? I think that speaks a lot about the vibrancy of this community that, came from very little. And like Charlie, I still make beer at home. We've got some other breweries, but I made my last batch of beer 6 weeks ago, which I do every year with my children. I have 2 young daughters, and they're now 10 and 12. We've been doing it since kindergarten, and I don't know why I made them wait, but they actually do it for Mother's Day. My wife, she doesn't get some nasty chocolates or things like that. She gets her own beer, and they make the labels. And they actually, I remember my daughter brought a bottle in to show and tell in kindergarten. She was very proud of it, but she came back a little crestfallen because, and I said, well, what did your teacher think of your homebrew? She said, Daddy, what does it mean, inappropriate? And I just said, it means your teacher is stupid and narrow-minded. Because I remember, as my dad, as Charlie mentioned, was a professional brewer. And so I grew up around breweries, and several times we made beer at home back in the 60s when, if I remember it right, it was Blue Ribbon malt syrup, which, because, of course, it was illegal to homebrew. There were no real homebrew supply stores, at least around Cincinnati. But you go to a grocery store. Of course, he had worked in brewery. You could get hops, you get yeast, and you'd get these cans of malt syrup. And I mean, it was great making illegal beer. There's nothing better than good beer except illegal good beer. There's probably still a few people who are in that situation. Welcome to the Rocket City Brewers from Huntsville, Alabama. All right. How was your court appearance? Well, there are still a few benighted, perhaps God-forsaken places where homebrewing is still illegal, but hopefully that long night will end and we'll be able to do it in all 50 states. And one of the things that to me has always been not just wonderful about the homebrewing community is that, and I will put this out there, but when, my family's been brewing a long time, so I have a somewhat long historical view of beer and brewing. And I believe that here in America, right now, we are at a truly historic moment in the 8,000 years of brewing history. And the people in this room are in the vanguard of that. I genuinely believe that 100 years from now, brewers, there will still be brewers and homebrewers, and they will look back at this place and this time and wish that they had been brewing beer here and now. Because the amount of creativity, vitality, energy, and curiosity that exists in American brewing culture today is completely unprecedented in the 8,000 years of brewing history. The closest you can come to it is that decade in the 1840s in Central Europe, in that kind of golden triangle between Munich, Vienna, and Pilsen, when the fabled brewmasters like Dreyer and Sedlmayr were giving birth to many of the styles of beer that we cherish today, at sort of a confluence of a lot of things. The beginnings of understanding of yeast, using non-wood and coal heat sources to kiln the malt, the advent of commercial refrigeration, the widespread use of thermometers and hydrometers, the development of commercially available clear glassware. A whole bunch of things came together, and it was a magical time in the history of brewing, unprecedented, singular time in the history of brewing. And I believe that we in America, homebrewers and small brewers alike, are in a similar magical time. And it's a uniquely American moment. It involves exploring ingredients, brewing processes, and styles that have never been explored before, pushing through traditions and boundaries, and it's just an openness to many different flavors and tastes and styles and recipes. I mean, Charlie has got a greater variety of interesting beers, in his home bar than exist in all of Bavaria. It's true. when you think about what he just listed, I mean, imagine even getting a decent IPA, in Munich. They would turn up their noses at it. Not to mention, smoked Oktoberfest. That would be a travesty. But to us, it's just fun. And it is, I think, out of that spirit and fun and playfulness and iconoclasm that the American craft brewing movement was born, and it was rooted in and nourished by homebrewers. And when I think about the history of Boston Beer Company and Sam Adams, I'm very proud to have been a part of the movement that has led us to this moment today. I started, as Charlie mentioned, as a home brewer. It was, you could barely get decent supplies, but at least you could get something better than that nasty blue ribbon malt syrup, which was one step above Cairo, and made the first batches in my kitchen. It was an experience. I ended up steaming the wallpaper off, which pissed my wife off no end. She divorced me, but you never know. I mean, she got the house and I got the beer company, so we're still friends. The early problems, I think, in craft brewing were basically just getting it right. And I don't mean even getting the recipe right. As homebrewers, we know we can do that. But getting the beer in a state where you could actually get it to the consumer's mouth without it being some kind of science project that was full of various bacteria and other little microorganisms. I think, in those days when you sent beer to a lab, you learned the meaning of TNTC, which I don't know if any of it, when they do a bacterial count, TNTC basically means too fucking many, but it actually stands for too numerous to count. And I was lucky because I had a dad who was a commercial brewer, who grew up around breweries. My grandfather was a brewmaster as well, and being Germans, they were really pig-headed and they never spoke. So I didn't see my grandfather for the first 12 years of my life. That's how stubborn people are in these old German brewing families. And he'd actually worked for Anheuser-Busch until either he quit or they fired him. I never quite got this. All I know is that there were bottles of beer thrown against the wall at the end of his career there. And my dad was helpful enough to basically help me solve the quality problems that plagued craft brewers in the first half of the 80s by contract brewing and going to breweries that had world-class quality control and labs and sanitation and so forth. And that then led to really the next sort of challenge for craft brewing, which was really centered around, in this evolution of the craft brewing movement, was centered around bringing essentially traditional old world styles of beer to the United States. That was really what we were doing, was rediscovering brewing styles, many of which were about to die out or had died out in the old world, and the American craft brewers kind of became the Noah's Ark of the world's brewing traditions. People like Fritz Maytag really saved porter. It was gone in England, and Fritz began brewing a porter here, and the quality of his beer re-inspired English brewers to start brewing porter again. And much like, in some ways, the French wine growing areas are built on California rootstocks because phylloxera had basically wiped out French vineyards. There will be a time, I believe, when European brewing traditions will in fact have their roots here in the United States. And that was really the challenge for craft brewing, was reestablishing historic styles of beer here in the United States. And that went into the beginning of the 90s, and we were very much caught up in that, making things like a Doppelbock, Dunkelweizen, Oktoberfest, and so forth. And then in about 15 years ago, I basically was getting bored with that, and the literature of Zymergy and some of the conference notes from the Craft Brewers Convention helped make it easy to brew these styles. In fact, some of the recipes in Zymergy you could literally scale up and translate and make a very, very good commercial version of an old world style. And so it became easy, it got a little boring, and I started thinking about beer differently. Because, we all have this sort of paradigm of things, and back then the paradigm of beer, it extended across from double bocks to IPAs, porters, stouts, Belgian styles, and so forth. But it was still fairly bounded. It still had very clear limits of what beer could be. They were a much broader limits than it existed in 1983, when virtually every American thought beer, if it wasn't cold and fizzy and in a can, it wasn't beer. But they were still within the boundaries of the world's historic styles of beer. And I started thinking about, well, what really is beer? And beer is fermented grain. Basically, if you think about, there's the kinds of alcohol. It's basically beer, wine, and liquor. And beer is fermented grain, wine is fermented fruit, and liquor is the distilled product of one of those two things. And so if you think about beer that way, it's very liberating. It means that beer can be many, many, many things. And the poor winemaker never really got beyond their silly grape. That's all they have is this grape. And if you're a winemaker, like, your whole big decision of creativity is skins or no skins. That's kind of it. And that, unfortunately, winemakers have not gotten beyond that notion. And as a result, there's not that much variety in wine. They practically give themselves brain damage coming up with new descriptors when there's really only about 20 that mean anything. They're trying to stretch their wine to go with foods that it doesn't go with, rather than trying to stretch the variety and tastes and flavors in their wines. As Randy reminded us at Savor, we were on a panel together, and he was talking about food and beer pairings being much broader and more diverse than food and wine pairings. He said, look, if the wine guys say, well, this is a hard pairing, try a Gewürztraminer, it means they don't have shit. It basically means get a beer. Brewers have not accepted those boundaries because beer is fermented grain, and that's where we start. So I was thinking about beer from that perspective And one thing that intrigued me was, for many, many, many years, people had accepted the fact that beer could be no more than 13 or 14% alcohol. I think the strongest beer in the world was Sammy Claus. It was about 13. There were some Thomas Hardys up around that range. And that was kind of considered the sound barrier, if you will, for the alcohol in beer. That intrigued me. And the idea of, I wonder what would happen if you pushed the yeast beyond that sound barrier. What would we get? And so I started playing around with it, and you get a lot of weird stuff. It's kind of like Starship Enterprise stuff where you're taking beer, where no beer has gone before, and discovering weird life forms. And that resulted in 1994 in probably the first of what's now called extreme beer. And it was called Triple Bock. It was about 17.5% alcohol, and it didn't taste like any beer that you'd ever have. For a number of reasons. The yeast, of course, has made some pretty weird flavors, interesting, mostly nice flavors. You've got harsh alcoholic burn, so in order to solve that, I basically drew upon the wisdom bequeathed to us by a bunch of illiterate backwoods moonshiners about 100 miles south of here in Bourbon County. God love them, who figured out that if you charred the inside of an oak barrel and put a high alcohol in it, it came out really smooth. So we started aging beer in bourbon barrels that we bought from Bluegrass Cooperage down there. And during that process, I sort of have a revelation, which was very simple. What I realized is that the beverages that we enjoy and respect and cherish today, across the whole spectrum of human creativity, things like porters and stouts and IPAs, but also cognac and bourbon and champagne. These beverages didn't always exist. Somebody invented them. They weren't here when God made rocks and dirt and trees. They were the creation of human beings out of their own living hearts and their own imagination and curiosity and probably sense of playfulness and what the hellness. And so why should that wonderful process stop? Why should we accept the clearly wrong notion that every really wonderful alcoholic beverage that could possibly be created has already been created? That can't be true. And I think that was what sort of led me to keep pushing on these kind of crazy beers. I called them extreme beer because it was 1994. If you remember, it was when the X Games became popular and extreme sports became popular. And somebody from a magazine asked me what I called this kind of brewing. And I said, well, call it extreme beer. Because what I liked about the X Games was there were people who said, these aren't sports. This shouldn't be on TV. This isn't a real sport like baseball or football. They don't have endorsement contracts. How can it be a sport? And these are just, kids having fun. And I thought, well, wait a minute. Isn't that the nature and the essence of sports, is kids having fun? And that's extreme sports? Well, that's what I think about when I think about extreme brewing and extreme beer. It's brewers having fun. And that's why I believe that this is a special moment and time in the 8,000 years of brewing history, because this community here and your colleagues in the American craft brewing movement are having a lot of fun. And they are, we together are redefining what beer is and can be and hereafter will be. And that is an amazing moment, an amazing opportunity. The people in this room are and will redefine the very nature of beer. And I predict that 100 years from now, there will probably be 200 styles of beer at the World Beer Cup, and most of them will be invented by people like the ones in this room and the craft brewers in the United States. We collectively are changing the entire history of beer and brewing. And that is a very, very cool thought. Because the brewer's art is not confined like the winemaker's art. A brewer, and you'll all know this, but maybe it's just helpful to phrase it this way. A brewer is like a chef. A brewer, when he or she makes a beer, is preparing a dish of food. And we choose what ingredients we want to put in our beer. We are not constrained. We can put anything we want in a beer. We can use, things that people have used before, like, anise or ginger or grains of paradise. We can do some pretty amazing things. I just had a beer 2 days ago aged in a Tabasco barrel. It was pretty cool. It was surprising, but needed a little more fermentable extract left in the beer to kind of balance the fire. But it was going in a good direction, and it was challenging. It made me think. It made me rethink about the flavor structure of beer. How do you construct a really beautiful glass of beer? And our challenge is very much like what a chef does. The brewer's art allows us any process, any ingredient that we want. And I predict that there will be people in this room who will invent a style of beer that brewers will be making in 100 years. So to me, it's very exciting to be in this community. You guys are still kind of the creative forefront of the craft brewing movement in the United States, and the craft brewing movement in the United States is in the forefront of world brewing. So when you have a glass of beer tonight, I just hope that you can soak in and enjoy this moment that you're all a part of. It's never existed before in 8,000 years of brewing history, and enjoy it because it will probably never happen again in the next 8,000 years. So, cheers. Okay. We got a few minutes, and I've been drinking beer, and you guys are getting really interesting. So, if there's any questions, we've got a few minutes. Is that all right? If there's any questions, yep.
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
I just want to say, February of 2006, I watched your video at National Homebrewers, and and my name is Bill Lorenzo, and I watched this video on Sam Adams' website, How to Brew Beer. So I went and bought a Brewer's Best kit and a red ale. I made it. Next month will be my year anniversary of owning a home brew shop. I mean, I liked it. I liked what I wanted to do, and this man here inspired me to do what I wanted to do, so I just want to say thank you.
No, thank you. You're doing the Lord's work. Yeah. Probably not. My parents. Well, I'm from Cincinnati. My parents live on a farm east of here, and they're older. They're an age. It was my dad says, Jim, I'm at the age where I don't buy green bananas. So I'm not going to miss a chance to visit.
At the Oakland conference, you were part of a lunchtime panel. Someone asked you in 1990 in Oakland, what in the beer world was your worst nightmare? And your answer was Anheuser-Busch making craft beer. So I'm going to ask the question again now that the industry has changed a bit. What's your worst beer nightmare?
Well, it is a good question because Charlie pointed out my great-great-grandfather's brewery is now a parking lot for their trucks. They bought it, bulldozed it, and paved it. What is my worst nightmare? I guess, it's this nightmare all of us share, which was Prohibition. I mean, there was a time when, I know because my grandfather was a brewmaster, there was a time when brewers were not allowed to practice their craft. 13 long, miserable years without a beer. That's my worst nightmare. Yes?
When you're not drinking a Boston Lager, what are you drinking?
My dad always said all beer is good. Some beer is better, but all beer is good. So, I'll drink, I do drink everything. I've had a Bud Light, I confess. And I've had lots of, and I've had a Utopias, and I've had damn near everything in between. And to me, a beer is a good beer if I can taste in that beer the brewer's intent. Any beer that clearly expresses the brewer's intent, to me, it's a pleasure to share that intent with the community of brewers through a glass of beer. Yeah.
So we all love beer, and beer is a big part of our life, and we all have friends who are still scared of the dark beer, the hoppy beer, anything different from the standard they grew up with. I'm just curious, for growing your business, you guys focus on bringing beer drinkers to your beer, or bringing people who are new to beers to Samuel Adams?
You have to do the first. It's like, imagine you're talking about people who are afraid of the dark, and it's kind of, like you're in the jungle and there's all these scary animals around. It's sort of the mentality of being a small brewer for the first 10 or 15 years. So what you kind of do is you build a fire and you make this warm, cozy place. And if you do that, the animals begin to lose their fear and want to gather with you around the fire. So that's what the beer does. It makes this warm, cozy place. And eventually, they choose to leave their benighted state and join you around the warm. The Germans have this wonderful word that has no English translation, but it basically means the warm coziness of beer. It's Gemütlichkeit. And so you create some Gemütlichkeit, and people, come in from the cold and darkness to be there.
Speaking of that, I want to personally say thank you on behalf of, I'm sure, a lot of us who last year got home from the Denver convention shortly after got this wonderful box of 2 glasses. And while I don't drink Sam Adams every day, I think of Sam Adams because every day I grab that glass to enjoy my beer, and I think it adds a lot more. So thank you to you. And
Well, we were very, we're very grateful to the AHA for allowing us to do that, because we were, we thought we had something cool. We were very proud of it, and with that, you want to share it with people who can appreciate it. And there's really not that many people who are so geeky about beer that they, think like winemakers do, that you need the proper glassware and all the physiology of taste that leads to the fact that a really good wine will in fact be enhanced by the proper glassware. That all that physiology of taste applies to beer as well. It's just that beer hasn't had the dignity and respect and nobility that has been accorded wine. Certainly not in the last 20 years, when we've got the big brewers dumbing beer down to the level of farting horses and crotch-biting dogs and mud wrestling women and twins. And we were, trying to change the way people think about mankind's oldest beverage. And this group is a group of people, first, that can appreciate something like that, and second, that makes really good beer and puts a lot of effort into their beer. And we thought, well, wow, maybe it'll, help you appreciate the flavors in your own beers, just like it does in our beer. So we're really happy to have a group of people that we could share that with. No, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Boy, do we love hearing stuff like that, right? Great words, Jim. Thanks so much. My name is Randy Mosier. As some of you probably know, I am the outgoing chair of the American Homebrewers Association Governing Committee. This is the committee that serves the interests of membership to represent your wishes to the organization in general. We've been working very hard with Gary and the rest of the staff to set the priorities for the organization, future direction, and we also represent the AHA's interest on the board of directors of the Brewers Association. So every year we put together an award, a recognition award, for a person who has had a major impact on our hobby in various ways. And today we thought it would be a great idea, since we're in Cincinnati. Jim's name has been on the list for several years, and these awards are always a matter of, well, who's here and what's the special occasion, and
and who's here.
Well, there's always more deserving people, and so you pick the. No, that's not what I meant. There's always more deserving people on the list than you have room to make awards for in any given year. There's always a big stack.
Yeah. Nice catch.
No, I just forgot the last half of that sentence. So. Anyway, so this year's recipient deeply deserves it. Now, for it may not always be totally obvious why a commercial brewer would be this great aid to homebrewers. And of course, a lot of the things Jim has said here, it's clear that he's one of us, that he shares our point of view that beer culture is really important in the world, that it's a significant art of humanity, a really great treasure that we have to work with. That's key. That's obviously crucial. But in many ways behind the scenes, Jim's been a great supporter, of course, in ways like sponsorships and Zymergy advertising and things like that along the years, in projects like the glassware, these little gifts that he's bestowed, free honey for the mead. How about that mead? Anybody had the Fireball mead yet? So all of that kind of thing. Let me just make sure I'm not missing anything, because we don't want to get this wrong. I promise I'm about done. Oh, yeah. Oh, first of all, how many people, what'd you feel like when you saw homebrewers on TV? Was that the coolest thing? And without Jim and Boston Beer, we would never see homebrewers on national network television. That's just an awesome thing. And of course, Longshot being a huge part of that, and that great opportunity to put people like Rodney, who's here, and I don't know who else is, Mike. If there's any other brewers here. Yeah, raise your hands. Yeah, to give them a little shot at stardom, to make homebrewers kind of stars and put our hobby in front of people. It's just unbelievable. Great opportunity. And again, he sees the value in our hobby to what he's trying to do as well. So that's really great stuff. And also, finally, that when this organization was formed out of the merger of the Brewers Association of America and the old AOB, it was far from a done deal that homebrewing would be a part of that organization. There were several people who saw it as purely a matter of a trade organization. Why would we have this growth on our side of homebrewing? What is possibly could be the reason? And we rationed it. We argued it out and we discussed it, and everybody came around to a point of view of yes, homebrewing is important. We just reaffirmed that at our most recent board meeting. And all through that discussion, Jim was a passionate advocate for homebrewers being a part of this organization and contributing. We thank him deeply for that. So unless anybody else has any other great reasons, I'm going to hand off the award, Jim. Thanks so much.
Wow.
We deeply appreciate it.
Thank you. That's very nice. Thank you.
Well, there you go. Inspiring stuff. I hope you enjoyed that. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of the coverage that you're going to hear from NHC in the weeks to come. And I've got to go edit video now so that I can get that out there, too. Thanks to everybody again for your patience in the past few weeks as we took a little breather from posting the regular podcasts. But I hope it's worth it, all the stuff we got. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. And you can check out our low-tech lagering and decoction mashing DVD on our site, basicbrewing.com. That's where you can see Steve Wilkes do a single-step decoction mash and follow me through a lager fermentation in the middle of summertime where I don't use a dedicated chest freezer. And there are also original DVDs in Basic Brewing Introduction to Extract Home Brewing. We walk you through the extract brewing process step by step from boiling to bottling. And in Basic Brewing Stepping into All Grain, we take you through the all grain process from milling your grain to collecting your wort. And we got combo deals to save you a few bucks if you want to buy more than one DVD at a time. And you can also see a listing of the fine folks, a growing listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. And if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order it online in our shop at basicbrewingshop.com. But show your local homebrew store the love and support them. Remember, also, we have shirts and hats as well, including our ever-popular Go Forth and Flocculate shirt. And soon, if I can get my act together, we've got new colors of our shirts that we're going to offer. So keep your eyes out for that. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are Ale, Beer, and Brewsters in England, Women's Work in a Changing World, and Economy Beer Line Cleaning Kit. Thanks again, everybody. And remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping, and we appreciate your support there. And there's also a Kindle link, I think, out there if you're going to buy one of those things. But that's all until next week. Until then, thanks for listening. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson, our buddy in Austin. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.